In a shocking and unexpected move, the US has launched a vicious attack accusing Captain Ibrahim Traoré of misusing Burkina Faso's precious gold reserves to protect his so-called junta regime. To add insult to injury, a Level 4 travel advisory has been issued, citing terrorism, crime and kidnapping in a clear attempt to smear the nation's reputation and isolate it globally. But hear this, Burkina Faso stands unbowed. Under Captain Traoré's bold leadership, the country is seizing control of its future, and no Western propaganda can extinguish its fire. Hit that like button, subscribe, and join me as we expose the truth behind this escalating tension. On April 15, 2025, the Burkinabe Ministry of Foreign Affairs dropped a bombshell press release, rejecting baseless accusations hurled by General Michael Langley, head of the U.S. Africa Command, AFRICOM, during a session with the U.S. Senate Armed Services Committee. Langley had the audacity to claim that Burkina Faso's gold reserves, our gold, the wealth of our land, are being used to protect the junta regime rather than benefiting the Burkinabe people. And as if that wasn't enough, the very next day, the U.S. Embassy in Ouagadougou issued a Level 4 travel advisory warning American citizens against traveling to Burkina Faso, citing terrorism, crime and kidnapping. Coincidence? I think not. As the great Franklin D. Roosevelt once said, in politics nothing happens by accident. If it happens, you can bet it was planned that way. This is a calculated move, my people, and we're about to break it down. Let's set the scene. During a Senate Armed Services Committee hearing, Chairman Roger Wicker posed a loaded question to General Langley, asking if there are instances where the elite of a country use national resources to protect themselves while the populace suffers. Wicker called this corruption. Langley, without hesitation, pointed his finger at Captain Ibrahim Traoré, accusing him of siphoning Burkina Faso's gold reserves to shield his so-called junta regime. These are fighting words, and they strike at the heart of Burkina Faso's new sovereignist dynamic, a dynamic that has the West trembling in their boots. The Burkinabe Foreign Ministry didn't mince words in its response. In a scathing statement, they condemned Langley's remarks as frivolous, unfounded, and eminently political, arguing that his claims deliberately undermine Burkina Faso's bold efforts to reclaim control of its resources and chart its own destiny. The ministry declared, by asserting that Burkina Faso's mineral resources, as well as certain revenues from cooperation with the People's Republic of China, would not benefit the population and would instead serve to protect the current regime, General Langley adopted a stance that deliberately denies Burkina Faso's new sovereignist dynamic. Let's be clear, this isn't just an attack on Captain Traoré, it's an attack on the Burkinabe people, on African sovereignty, and on the very idea that we can govern ourselves without Western interference. The ministry went on to say, the ministry wishes to express its strong protest against these erroneous assertions, which serve no other purpose than to harm the image of the Burkinabe government, particularly with regard to the efforts made in the fight against corruption and to defend the interests of the Burkinabe people, two major priorities of the President of Faso, His Excellency Captain Ibrahim Traoré. Now, let's talk about Captain Ibrahim Traoré, the 37-year-old revolutionary who has become a beacon of hope, not just for Burkina Faso, but for the entire continent. Since taking power in 2022, Traoré has been relentless in his mission to transform Burkina Faso into a self-reliant, prosperous nation. Unlike the corrupt elites the West loves to prop up, Traoré doesn't live like a king. Do you know how much he earns? A measly 500,000 CFA francs per month, the salary of an army captain, not a president. Show me another African leader who has forsaken the lavish perks of the presidency for the humble wages of a soldier. You can't, because there's none. Yet, General Langley has the nerve to accuse this man of corruption. The hypocrisy is staggering. Traoré has waived the privileges of the presidency, living modestly while pouring his energy into uplifting his people. The Burkinabe government has made it crystal clear. Since his accession to the highest office, His Excellency Captain Ibrahim Traoré has worked resolutely to improve public governance. All revenues from mining are now returned to state coffers and are subject to rigorous and transparent management within the framework of the national budget. This is a leader who walks the talk, and the West can't stand it. Let's get to the heart of the matter. Burkina Faso's gold reserves. General Langley seems awfully concerned about how Burkina Faso is managing its own resources. But let me ask you this. Is Burkina Faso's gold America's property? Is it Langley's personal piggy bank? No, it belongs to the Burkinabe people, and they have every right to use it as they see fit. Even if, and this is a big if, Burkina Faso were using its gold to protect Captain Traoré, what's wrong with that? Is it not their sovereign right to prioritize the security of their leader, especially in a region plagued by terrorism and foreign-backed destabilization? The West's obsession with Burkina Faso's gold isn't new. For decades, European powers and their allies have plundered Africa's resources, leaving our people in poverty while they build empires. But Captain Traoré has said, enough is enough. In a bold move last year, he halted gold exports, declaring that Burkina Faso's gold would no longer be sent abroad for processing. Instead, it will be used to back the nation's currency, a revolutionary step toward economic independence. This is the kind of leadership that terrifies the West, because it threatens their stranglehold on our economies. And let's not forget the timing of Langley's accusations. They come just as Burkina Faso is deepening its ties with the People's Republic of China, a partner that respects African sovereignty and doesn't lecture us on how to run our affairs. The Burkinabe Foreign Ministry called out Langley's attempt to smear this cooperation, stating that his remarks served no other purpose than to harm the image of the Burkinabe government. The West can't stand the fact that Africa is forging new alliances and breaking free from their neo-colonial chains. Now let's talk about that Level 4 travel advisory. The US Embassy claims it's about terrorism, crime and kidnapping, but the timing is too convenient. Issued just one day after Burkina Faso's foreign ministry called out Langley's lies, this advisory smells like a retaliatory move. It's a classic imperialist tactic: smear a nation's reputation, scare off investors and tourists, and isolate it on the global stage. But Burkina Faso isn't some banana republic that will bow to pressure. Under Traoré's leadership, the country is fighting back against terrorism, strengthening its military, and building a future for its people. The US wants us to believe that Burkina Faso is a dangerous, unstable place. But let me ask you, who's fueling the instability in the Sahel? Who's been arming proxy groups and sowing chaos to keep Africa dependent on Western aid and security? The fingerprints of Western intelligence agencies are all over the region's conflicts, and now they have the gall to point fingers at Traoré for protecting his nation. The hypocrisy is enough to make your blood boil. Make no mistake, Captain Ibrahim Traoré is a modern-day revolutionary in the mold of Thomas Sankara and Muammar Gaddafi, leaders who dared to dream of a free and prosperous Africa. And like Sankara and Gaddafi, Traoré is a target because he refuses to play by the West's rules. The US and its allies want him gone, just as they wanted Sankara gone when they orchestrated his assassination in 1987. That's why they're so fixated on his security arrangements. They don't want a protected leader. They want a vulnerable one who can be easily eliminated. But here's what General Langley and his puppet masters don't understand. The people of Burkina Faso love their captain. From Ouagadougou to Accra, Traoré is a continental icon. When he visited Ghana recently, the streets erupted in cheers with crowds chanting his name while other leaders were met with silence. This is a man who inspires hope, not just in Burkina Faso but across Africa. His commitment to his people is unshakable, and no amount of Western propaganda can change that. Let's talk about what Captain Traoré is actually doing, because the Western media won't tell you this. Since taking power, he has launched sweeping reforms to transform Burkina Faso into a beacon of self-reliance. In agriculture, he's invested in irrigation systems and local seed production, reducing dependence on imported food. In infrastructure, new roads and bridges are connecting rural communities to markets. In education, schools are being built, and scholarships are ensuring that every child has a chance to learn. In health, clinics are popping up in underserved areas, and maternal care is improving. And let's not forget the mining sector. Traoré has nationalized 2 major gold mines, ensuring that Burkina Faso's wealth stays in Burkina Faso. He's cracked down on corruption, with mining revenues now flowing directly into the national budget for transparent management. These aren't just promises, they're tangible results that the Burkinabe people can see and feel. While the West accuses him of corruption, Traoré is building a nation where the people come first. The West thinks it can bully Burkina Faso into submission with sanctions and smear campaigns, but they're only shooting themselves in the foot. When they impose sanctions, they cut themselves off from Burkina Faso's gold, uranium and other resources. They lose access to a market of 22 million people. They alienate a young, dynamic leader who could have been a partner if they had treated him with respect. As Traoré himself has said, when they think they are punishing us, they are punishing themselves. Burkina Faso is not alone in this fight. Across the Sahel, nations like Mali and Niger are joining the sovereignist wave, rejecting Western domination and embracing partnerships with China, Russia, and other global South nations. This is the new Africa, a continent that refuses to be a pawn in the West's geopolitical games. And Captain Traoré is leading the charge, a digital-age revolutionary who's carrying the torch of Sankara and Gaddafi into the 21st century. My people, the escalating tensions between Burkina Faso and the USA are not just about one nation or one leader. They're about the soul of Africa. Will we allow the West to dictate our future, to plunder our resources, to assassinate our heroes? Or will we stand up united and say, no more? Captain Ibrahim Traoré is fighting for all of us, and it's our duty to have his back. So here's what I'm asking you to do. Share this report far and wide. Let the world know the truth about Burkina Faso's struggle. Support Captain Traoré's vision by amplifying his achievements and calling out Western lies. And if you're in the diaspora, organize, mobilize, and pressure your governments to respect African sovereignty. Together, we can build an Africa that's free, prosperous, and proud. The spirit of Sankara lives on in Captain Traoré, and no imperialist plot can extinguish it. As I conclude, let me say this. Brothers and sisters of the motherland, the West, led by the United States and its allies, has weaponized sanctions to keep African leaders in chains, forcing them to bow to foreign interests. These are not tools of justice, but traps to ensure our continent remains divided and dependent. Yet, a new dawn is rising, led by visionaries like Captain Ibrahim Traoré of Burkina Faso, who dreams of an independent, united Africa. Today, we expose the sinister use of sanctions, call for African leaders to forge a united front, and imagine the unstoppable power of a continent under one leader, a force so mighty that no sanction could touch it. This is the Africa we must build. Sanctions are not about democracy or human rights. They are about control. The West uses them to punish African nations that dare to prioritize their people over foreign agendas. Zimbabwe is a prime example. In 2001, the US passed the Zimbabwe Democracy and Economic Recovery Act, ZEDERA, after President Robert Mugabe's land reforms reclaimed white-owned farms for black Zimbabweans. The EU followed with sanctions on Mugabe's allies and institutions. The stated goal was democracy, but the real aim was to cripple a nation that defied Western economic interests. ZEDERA blocked Zimbabwe from accessing IMF and World Bank loans, strangling its economy. The result? Hyperinflation, unemployment, and suffering, all blamed on Mugabe's mismanagement, while sanctions' role was downplayed. Sudan faced similar punishment. For decades, US sanctions citing terrorism devastated Sudan's economy, restricted trade, and fueled instability. Even after Sudan normalized ties with Israel in 2020, relief was slow, proving sanctions are less about reform and more about submission. Eritrea, sanctioned by the US and UN since 2009 for allegedly supporting al-Shabaab, a charge it denies, suffers for its fierce independence in the Horn of Africa. In the Sahel, Mali, Burkina Faso and Niger face sanctions from ECOWAS, a body often aligned with Western interests, after expelling French troops and seeking Russian partnerships. When Mali's Assimi Goïta and Burkina Faso's Ibrahim Traoré rejected neo-colonial ties, ECOWAS imposed border closures and trade bans, hurting ordinary citizens most. These sanctions send a clear message: step out of line and your people will pay. The West's hypocrisy is infuriating. France clings to its former colonies through the CFA franc, tying 14 nations to its treasury, yet faces no sanctions for this economic stranglehold. Leaders like Rwanda's Paul Kagame or Uganda's Yoweri Museveni, despite questionable democratic records, escape punishment because they serve Western interests, hosting US bases or securing mining deals. Meanwhile, nations like Zimbabwe or Mali are targeted for daring to say no. The US ignores Saudi Arabia's abuses or Israel's occupation, but swiftly sanctions African nations for lesser issues. This double standard reveals sanctions as tools to maintain a global order where Africa stays subservient. African leaders, hear this. Sanctions thrive on our division. When ECOWAS sanctions Mali at Western behest, it betrays Pan-African unity. When Zimbabwe or Eritrea suffers alone, we all lose. The West divides to conquer, but unity is our strength. The African Union, AU, with 54 member states, could be a fortress against coercion. Imagine an AU that counters sanctions with intra-African trade, a shared currency, and mutual defense. The African Continental Free Trade Area, AFCFTA, is a start, but we need more. Nigeria's oil, Congo's cobalt, Ghana's gold, and Ethiopia's hydropower must be poured to create an economic bloc no sanction can break. If Mali is targeted, let Kenya and Angola step in. If Zimbabwe is isolated, let Algeria and South Africa provide trade. History proves unity's power. During apartheid, African nations like Zambia and Tanzania sanctioned South Africa, supporting liberation despite their own struggles. The Organization of African Unity coordinated this solidarity, showing what we can achieve together. Today, leaders like Traoré, Goïta, and Niger's Abdourahmane Tiani have formed the Alliance of Sahel States, rejecting Western interference. This model must grow to encompass all of Africa, an alliance that declares sanction one, sanction all. Now, let us dream boldly, a United States of Africa as envisioned by Kwame Nkrumah and Muammar Gaddafi, led by a single elected leader commanding 1.4 billion Africans. Could the West sanction such a leader? Never. A united Africa would be a global powerhouse, controlling 30% of the world's minerals, 60% of cobalt, 90% of platinum, vast lithium and gold reserves, and 12% of global oil. A single leader could renegotiate mining contracts, nationalize industries, and redirect wealth to our people. The West would hesitate to sanction, knowing an embargo on our resources would cripple their economies. This leader, accountable to a Pan-African parliament, would harness Africa's youthful population, projected to hit 2.5 billion by 2050, for industrialization and innovation. They would resolve conflicts like Sudan's war or Congo's militias through African mediation, not Western troops. The US sanctions Zimbabwe because it's small. It would never sanction a united Africa, too vital to global markets to isolate. In Burkina Faso, Captain Ibrahim Traoré is showing the way. At 37, he has expelled French troops, rejected neo-colonial agreements, and partnered with Russia and Turkey. When the US cut USAID, Traoré invested in agriculture, buying tractors and building factories to feed his people. His government has launched mobile clinics and curbed illicit gold exports. Living on a captain's salary, he rejects the lavish lifestyles of corrupt leaders. At the 2023 Russia-Africa Summit, he declared, "We must stop dancing to the imperialist tune." His Burkina Faso is a beacon of independence, but he needs allies to scale this vision continent-wide. African leaders convene an AU summit to reject sanctions, create a charter of sovereignty, a fund for sanctioned nations, and a trade network to defy isolation. Demand the lifting of sanctions on Zimbabwe, Eritrea, and others, and warn that new sanctions will face retaliation. Leaders, the youth, 60% of Africa's population, demand courage. They rally behind Traoré because he fights for them. Betray them, and you lose them. Unite, and you gain their power. To the people, hold leaders accountable. March, organize, demand. To the diaspora, amplify our struggle and invest in our future. Together, we can build an Africa no sanction can touch. Imagine the day when a single African leader, backed by a united continent, faces the West and says, "Sanction me and you get nothing in return." The US and EU would falter, knowing that Africa's minerals, markets and manpower are no longer theirs to exploit. This leader would command a military drawn from 54 nations, an economy rivaling China's, and a cultural renaissance that reclaims our stolen heritage. The West's sanctions would crumble, not because they lack force, but because Africa's unity would render them irrelevant. Brothers and sisters, the shackles of Western sanctions will not break themselves. The US and its allies wield these weapons to keep our leaders pliant and our continent divided, but we are not powerless. The dream of a united Africa, a single sovereign nation under one visionary leader, is our salvation. Imagine that leader, backed by 1.4 billion Africans, staring down the West and declaring, "Sanction me and you lose everything." Our cobalt, gold, oil and markets would make their threats hollow. Captain Ibrahim Traoré lights the path, showing that independence is possible when we prioritize our people over foreign masters. African leaders cast aside petty rivalries and unite under the AU's banner. Create a fortress of solidarity where no sanction can penetrate and no nation stands alone. To the people, rise up, demand leaders who embody Traoré's courage. To the diaspora, return and build with us. This is our moment to forge an Africa that feeds itself, defends itself, and bows to no one. Let us seize it, for as Sankara warned, a slave who does not revolt deserves no pity. Africa, unite. Our freedom awaits.